one might turn off the lifeblood of a whole country. With just a flip of a digital switch, not with tanks or rockets. What if, without a single conventional conflict, the empire that has dominated news for years and whose military aspirations have changed the geopolitics of the world were to find its economy crippled relatively immediately? Although it may sound like science fiction, oil, gas, and electricity are no longer the mainstays of any modern economy in today's hyperconnected world. In this scenario, Russia, an expansionist, resource-rich superpower, may have a vulnerability that is mainly being ignored: its digital infrastructure. Its data, communication, and the unseen networks that transfer money, plan logistics, and power a nation's digital heartbeat. Although Russia's energy sector, oil pipelines, gas exports, and electrical grids have received a lot of international attention, the communication and information networks that connect the nation are another area that is just as important and possibly more vulnerable. Data centers, financial networks, internet exchanges, and telecommunications hubs are examples of these systems. They are essential to every transaction, transport, and military or civilian coordination. There would be repercussions in every area of society if they were disturbed. Not only would the economy slow down, but it might come to a complete stop. Consider it this way. Conventional infrastructure, such as power plants or pipelines, may be fixed rather fast. It is possible to fix a burst pipeline. It is possible to replace a downed electrical substation. The digital economy, however, is much more vulnerable. The loss is far more devastating if networks and core servers are rendered inoperable. Coordination becomes impossible, communication breaks down, transactions go wrong, and information is lost. The strategic advantage of such a disruption could be disastrous in a combat situation. Moscow is the main node of Russia's digital infrastructure, which is centralized in certain hubs. The city is home to vital communication networks, internet exchanges, and data centers. These aren't your typical structures. They serve as the backbone of Russia's logistical and financial infrastructure. They house banking networks, mobile and broadband communication, government coordination, and payment processing systems. Both military and civilian operations would be severely hampered if these systems were taken offline, even for a short time. The consequences would be felt across the economy. Think about the consequences. It is impossible for consumers and businesses to operate normally without access to dependable payment solutions. Logistics, emergency services, and supply chain coordination all go haywire in the absence of a functional communication network. In the past, even small disturbances to these systems have had a big economic impact. For instance, the financial industry in New York City was once severely disrupted when lightning struck a hydroelectric dam in Canada. The extent of the possible anarchy is astounding when you multiply that effect over a whole nation as reliant on technology as Russia. Imagine this in the framework of a strategy game to get a sense of it. The goal is to undermine a fictional kingdom that has expansionist aspirations. The best course of action might be to interfere with the digital and communication networks that underpin oil pipelines and power grids, which can be rebuilt, rather than going after them directly. This would be equivalent to turning off the enemy's command and control system in a fictitious game scenario, halting communication, coordination, and resource management. Economic activity would slow, supply lines would malfunction, and units on the battlefield would have difficulty receiving commands. The modern civilization's lifeline is its digital infrastructure. For daily business, payment systems like bank servers, internet transaction networks, and mobile money platforms are essential. Millions of people, companies, and government services are connected by telecommunications companies, data centers, and internet exchange points. The consequences would be severe and immediate if these were targeted and interfered with. When society abruptly loses access to its technical lifelines, the nation will experience a digital blackout, similar to what is depicted in dystopian movies. The foundation of this digital economy in Russia is made up of a few important organizations. Data centers, internet exchange nodes, and major telecom providers are located in and around Moscow. Data flow for banking, communications, and government processes is managed by firms such as MTS, Rostelecom, and other smaller internet infrastructure providers. If these nodes were strategically and precisely knocked out, the disruption would impact not just one city or area but the entire nation. Take the idea of an information pipeline, for example. Pipelines that are physically present, such as those that carry gas or oil, have geopolitical ramifications. Over time, they can be fixed or redirected. However, data in digital pipelines cannot be readily restored if it is lost or distorted. Communications break down, transactions disappear, and logistics become unmanageable. Digital systems don't have redundancy at scale like physical infrastructure does, therefore an attack on the key nodes would have disastrous repercussions. The speed and scope of disruption are the main benefits of focusing on digital infrastructure as opposed to conventional energy or transportation networks. Repairing a mechanical pipeline can take weeks or months, but the damage is usually limited. Conversely, digital systems are linked together. Several sectors can be paralyzed at once by a single central node failure. Unbroken digital flow is essential to industrial production, healthcare systems, financial markets, retail operations, and even military logistics. It has a cascading impact. A single blow sets off a series of economic collapses. The Hunger Games scenario, in which the rebellion gains momentum as soon as the power grid collapses, is remarkably similar to the analogy. In the real world, Russia's capacity to project power both at home and abroad would be significantly hampered by an abrupt outage of vital digital infrastructure. Markets would stutter, civilian morale may collapse, and the nation's leadership structures would find it difficult to react without operational communication links. There may be significant societal and economic repercussions. Disabling 3 to 5 of the most important digital nodes might cause a 50% loss in communication in a controlled strategic scenario. That is more than simply a number, it is a crippling blow to the economy. A country is essentially stuck in place when small firms are unable to make payments, huge corporations are unable to coordinate logistics, and government services are unable to operate effectively. Although there may be some partial solutions for big enterprises or government agencies, the larger economic machinery, particularly for small businesses and individual economic agents, would be severely disrupted. The ramifications go much beyond the short-term operating challenges. The financial system must be trusted in today's economies. Panic breaks out if people and companies start to doubt their capacity to communicate, access money, or make payments. Market turbulence, bank runs, and shortages of necessities may ensue. Essentially, disrupting an economy's digital core can have both short-term and long-term impacts, influencing not only infrastructure but also social stability and human behavior. Conventional military tactics frequently concentrate on physically demolishing supplies or resources. Blockading ports, destroying electrical grids, or bombing oil pipelines are all practical but fixable. But digital infrastructure is much more delicate. Data cannot always be recovered once it has been compromised, and restoring communication networks takes time and specialized knowledge. Disabling the system as a whole, as opposed to simply specific branches, is significantly more effective from a strategic gaming standpoint. Compared to traditional attacks, this strategy might cause more serious and quicker disruption in the actual world. Furthermore, digital infrastructure frequently interfaces with several industries at once. Businesses and suppliers, banks and clients, and government organizations and individuals are all connected by telecommunications. An attacker would strike several sectors simultaneously by focusing on these nodes. Compared to conventional kinetic activities, the potential impact is far larger. Modern economies are susceptible in ways that previous generations could hardly have predicted due to their interconnectedness. Targeting digital infrastructure carries hazards and ethical considerations, of course. Here, the hypothetical situation is presented as a strategic idea rather than a suggestion. Any attempt to interfere with another country's fundamental systems carries serious legal, ethical, and humanitarian repercussions in real-world geopolitics. In this instance, the emphasis is entirely analytical, comprehending the weaknesses in a hyperconnected economy and taking into account how those weaknesses can affect strategy. However, the lesson is evident even as a thought experiment. The resilience of the digital infrastructure that a nation depends on determines its strength. Although decentralized networks, redundancy, and backups might reduce risk, a concentrated digital center is still a weakness. Control over communication and information flow can be just as important in any future conflict, real or imagined, as control over resources or territory.